Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this second webinar of the series of LIFE-BECKON interactive webinars that we host in the LIFE-BECKON project that will focus on financing energy community projects. My name is Elena Macusiari, and together with my colleague Marta de los Rios White, we come from the European Network of Living Labs, one of the partners of the LIFE-BECKON project. And today we are happy to organize this interactive session with Covenant of Mayors, Europe Office, and Andrea Carossi. This is the second webinar of the interactive webinar series that we have as an essential component of the LIFE-BECKON capacity building program that we in Enel are responsible for. We started the series with a webinar on initiating and planning on energy communities that we had in March. And by scanning the QR code, you can register in the LIFE-BECKON one-stop shop platform. So you can see the recording in the materials from there, as well as all the training materials that we have been preparing for the project. Today's webinar is about financing energy community projects, and then we conclude the series on the 25th of April on a webinar focused on operation and management of energy communities, and more information will come soon also for the organization of this webinar. So as said, today's objective is to delve deeper into financing schemes and methods for energy community projects, getting also insights of what are the different available funding resources for such projects. And I would like to give the floor to Andrea, that today will be our moderator, so he can introduce the speakers and give the floor then to them before the interactive Q&A session that will follow right at the end. Thank you very much. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you, Elena. Thank you so much, and also to all Enel team involved in this webinar. Good morning, everybody. Welcome also to this webinar from the Covenant of Mayors office. I'm really pleased to be the moderator for this session, and I will then guide you and facilitate the discussion session at the end. That is the most important part also of this webinar. Let me now briefly introduce our estimated speakers of the day. First of all, we have Asier Larrechea. Then we have Achille Annozet from DG Ener, Dini Rodriguez from the European Investment Bank, and Chris Bratos from Rescop. And next slide, please. Now let's take a brief look at the agenda for today's session. Asier will start with an overview on the variety of funding possibility to set up and run energy communities. We will then jump into the European level with Achille Annozet presenting an overview on European policies and programs to support energy communities, to then delve deeper into the European Investment Bank funding opportunities and programs with Dini Rodriguez. And lastly, Chris Bratos will give a short presentation on the REPowerEU tracker. Very important, as I said, during the last part of the webinar, you will have the possibility to ask questions or share inputs in the Q&A session. So I already invite you to all actively participate and take the opportunity to ask questions to our estimated speaker, especially Chris Bratos from Rescop has to leave 15 minutes earlier. So I would like also prioritize questions for him. Next slide, please. Before starting, a couple of housekeeping rules. First of all, please note that this webinar is being recorded, and it will be shared throughout the LIFE-BECKON and Covenant of Mayors social media channels, together with all presentation. Please keep your microphone muted throughout the presentation to minimize background noise. And finally, again, we encourage you so much to actively participate during the Q&A session, but also putting your questions in the Q&A box. I think we can right now start with the presentation, and without further ado, Asier, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Andrea, for the introduction. So good afternoon to everyone. What I'm gonna do is just, I'm part of the LIFE-BECKON project as well. So just as an introduction, or just giving some context to what it means the funding, the financial part of the energy communities, I will give just a couple of points that I think that might help them to understand the rest of the presentations. So the first question is just what it needs to be financed. So what are we financing? It is quite important, and I see often in projects that there is a kind of misunderstanding between what it is an energy community and what it is just a local energy project. So when we are discussing and we are talking, especially in Europe, about energy communities, we are talking about something that is a legal entity. So that legal entity means that it has an statutes and it has a it might be just an association, it can be a cooperative or private companies, but it always needs to be a legal entity there. So something that we need to finance is that organization. On the other hand, then we have the different energy projects, and those projects, they can be the solar, that it's let's say clearly the most common project that it's used in energy communities, but you can do many different other activities, and those activities, they can be just wind, district heating, biomass projects, but also just investments in energy efficiency, or any kind of activity related to the retailing of this part. So I'm not going to enter into details on all the types of activities that they might be, but it's important to understand those ones. In addition to that, just to be clear that energy communities, they can be linked to other activities as well, that, for example, with shared mobility, that is something that it's already happening. So here, the only things that I want to underline is that it might happen that some of the participants are investing and are participating in the energy community, and some others, they can be participating in the energy community plus in one or different projects. So that means that the type of organization and the type of the financial solution that we need for the energy communities, it needs to be flexible and diverse. Now, so in terms of what type of financial instruments we have, there is a lot of different documents, information out there regarding the types of financial instruments that they might be used. Here is just a couple of examples that what we are doing in the LIFE-BECKON project, that we are collecting different type of information, and part of that is in financing. So on the right side, you will see what RISCOP developed. It's already back in 2020. And it's just a document that explains a bit on what type of different funding opportunities there are for energy communities. On the left side, it's a document from Australia that it does something similar, but in a different way. So here it's more kind of theoretical and explains more what diversity of different instruments there are. So just giving an example of that, I placed here some of the most common ones that I think that might help them for the rest of the speakers, also just to locate a bit the discussion. So on the first part, we have just the subsidies that usually, especially in Europe, the subsidies, they are coming from public. Okay, so when we talk about public funding, often we are talking about subsidies. Okay. In addition to that, we have the bank financing. So there we have quite a large diversity as well. So we are not talking only about traditional type of asking for a loan and that's it, but they are the green loans that they have specific characteristics, loan guarantees, ethical finance that is quite commonly introduced in this kind of projects. And so we need to understand that it's the bank financing also, it looks at the energy communities in a kind of different way. In addition to that, we have the crowdfunding and crowd lending. I'm not going to enter too much into detail, but we are talking about ways of participating for individuals or for individuals mainly in this type of projects. Participating, financing the projects. It might be that the financials, they are within the project, or it may be that you are just financing a project in which you are then not participating directly. And then we have others that like financial lease, that here what we are discussing as well, it's on, okay, could it be that there is an additional or someone else who comes and invests on the installations that we need? So on there are different mechanisms, and some of them quite innovative from financial perspective as well. And those are the leasing, renting, and purchase of installments directly. And then just something that it needs to be also underlined, and going to the last one, is that here in many of the energy communities, we are producing something. So from that, usually it's locally used, but sometimes we have even exceeded generation. And this is something also that can be used just to finance the project, or that was something that's quite common in this kind of energy communities. And I believe that it's where we need to head for, that it's the people that they are participating in the energy community, they are the ones paying because they are getting either financial benefits or other types of benefits. So it's just they are paying for that service as well. And just to give an example of how a renewable energy community can be financed. So this scheme is just from a real project that we started. I mean, the energy community is created just 3 weeks ago. So this is a real project in the Basque Country in Spain. And it's just a local community that they decided, first of all, we don't want to have the public introduced in the community. So we want to really start from the citizens and to be the citizens the ones leading the project. So there is not any municipality involved right now. In addition to that, they said, in principle, we want to be sure that we can use it without any public funding. And so what they are planning is, okay, we should have energy cost savings, and based on that, just get the project work. So what you see in the scheme is just on the top side, it's just the energy community, below it's the citizen. So, and then on the left and right side, you have the services that they are being provided. So on the right side, it's about solar self-consumption, and on the left side, it's about that they got the opportunity to get the wood for fireplaces. So they are doing, they are coordinating, and they are doing the purchase of this kind of services together. So from the energy community. So I'm not going to enter anymore now in details, but just to understand, it's in this case, what they are getting is they are asking from a bank loan, even though even the citizens, they want to invest already on the installations and on the energy community. So at the end, there are some citizens that they are just participating in the energy community. There are some other citizens that what they do is they are participating in the solar self-consumption project. So in addition to the yearly cooperative payment, they are also paying for the solar self-consumption services. And there are some others that they have fireplaces. So they are the ones participating on the left side, that it's on the collective wood buying. So it means that, and that's something that I wanted to underline also in the first slide, that it means that not all of them, they are investing on everything, but just participating in a different ways, in a different manners in the energy community. Okay, so this is just an example of fully private financing of an energy community. So that's it. I mean, from my side, this is what I wanted to explain, and I think that we will have now some other examples more from public funding and how that might work for energy communities.
Great, thank you so much, Asier. I think it was a very quick but very useful overview on the variety of funding possibility to set up around energy communities, and many thanks also for clarifying the difference between an energy community as a legal entity and an energy community related projects. Thank you so much. Let's see if participants would like to go more into details during the Q&A session. So it's now my great privilege to give the floor to Achille Annoset from DG Ener to share an overview on the European policies and programs to support energy communities. Achille, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Andrea, and thank you very much for inviting the European Commission, DG Energy, to speak at this very relevant and timely event as we shift towards implementation gear. Of course, the most relevant, or one of the most relevant questions is, where is the money? And how can we use it in order to also operationalize these community energy projects? If all is well, I have control over the slides. At least that was communicated to me. Otherwise, please just proceed.
I think you can just ask to Marta to
Very good.
change slide. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, let's start at the beginning. It's always good to have the basis and clarify which concepts are we actually talking about prior to diving more into the nitty-gritty new legal provisions as part of the Fit for 55 package, but also the possibilities that exist as part of the funding programs of the European Union. Next slide, please. So here we have our two concepts: citizen energy communities and renewable energy communities. And these are social concepts that we seek to empower to participate on a level playing field with more commercial actors on the electricity market and the gas market and in the heating sector. Next slide, please. So they have a shared core. They can both operate on renewable electricity market. Any legal entity it can take, it should be open and voluntary. And their primary purpose is to provide benefits for the community rather than to make profits, which is, of course, not to say that they can make profits. Next slide, please. So this didn't go well, this transformation, which is quite unfortunate to see. Perhaps it's better that I share my slides, because this is really not a great way of visualizing things. Can you see my screen?
Yes, very well. Maybe you
Very
can
good.
put in the presentation. Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
Very good. So let me catch up. Voila, here we are. Let me hide this. Very good. So here we have some fundamental differences. I think what's very relevant for the citizen energy community is that in principle any entity may participate. So there you can have a larger company or a university institution or a regional authority also being part of this energy community. And of course, this brings in the possibility for additional financial resources. This should, however, not result in a decisive influence over decision-making power by these actors. The effective control needs to sit still with natural persons, local authorities, and or small enterprises at the end of the day. So this delicate balance between having a financial stake by a more economically professional or commercial actor versus a bottom-up community ownership of the energy community needs to be maintained. Next slide, please. Yeah, sorry. So the enabling framework, so the renewable energy communities, they have some privileges, and one of them is the access to financial instruments and information. And also we have the customized support schemes, if you like. And in this regard, we have the state aid guidelines, where they specify that there is the possibility for member states to exempt from bidding procedures, but also to introduce eased participation requirements to bidding procedures to access operational support. The Fit for 55 package, so the most recent developments for the energy communities, it contains a lot of recognition of the potential that energy communities may have in quite innovative activities, or let's say more capex intensive activities as well, such as offshore wind and heat production, but it also encourages their involvement potentially in social public procurement procedures and taking them into account when designing heating plants. The electricity market design reform, which is a Commission proposal, which is currently at the stage of a political agreement, and today has been actually voted for in favor by the Parliament. So the next hurdle is to also secure that vote from the Council side. So energy sharing, the Commission proposal, let me still relate back to that. We empower active customers to engage in energy sharing, and to the extent that these active customers organize themselves through an energy community, they can also, of course, engage in community energy sharing. And how it's currently specified in our legislation is that this is based on a shared ownership by the members of the community. The real innovation here is in the back end, in the data management. So we ensure that member states would have to, once adopted this electricity market design proposal, facilitate the deduction, the automatic deduction of metering data for the purpose of calculating the energy component of the energy bill. Now, the EU support for energy communities, which is the main topic of today. Just to provide you an overview of the technical assistance for energy communities that we have been and are currently providing. So we have the Communities for Climate initiative, which is looking at a wider sense at communities. So not only looking at energy, but also food, circular economy, etc. Then we have the Energy Communities initiatives by DG Ener. For this, we have currently a running pilot action for the support service for citizen-led renovation. So empowering energy communities as well to engage in building renovation services. And then, of course, the past pilot actions which have come to a close, those projects are no longer actively managed or in operation. That was the Rural Energy Community Advisory Hub and the Energy Communities Repository. And for this, we had guidance documents that we produced, which are still, you can still consult on the archived website of these projects. The handbook on cross-border energy community, DG Regio and DG Ener are collaborating to see to what extent we can also bring these energy communities together across borders, or potentially even organize communities across borders within one single energy community. And then, of course, energy communities in the Western Balkans to support their development there. We have the EU Energy Communities Facility, which will we foresee their start in autumn 2024, and this will be providing grant support, small grants for energy communities looking to develop business plans for energy community projects, and that can really be in any area. We've seen the diversity of activities the communities are engaging in. For each of these activities, they could be eligible for this grant support, and we have a total available budget of €1 million. Then the relevant EU funding programs. So we have the Recovery and Resilience Facility, and I included the total amount of money that would be available from the EU budget. That member states can use to achieve certain objectives within the energy transition. And they could also, according to the guidance that the Commission has provided on the recovery and resilience plans in the context of REPowerEU, also use some of this money to support and promote energy communities to address energy poverty. And we've seen also some member states doing this, and I'm sure that the next speakers will elaborate on this. We have the Cohesion Policy Funds, and then in particular the European Regional Development Fund, the Cohesion Fund, and the Just Transition Fund. This is partly based on co-financing, so the member states can top up these budgets as well. And as you know, these funds are oriented towards specific EU member states in order to make sure that we all are in sync when it comes to our economic and system development across the European Union. In this regard, the cohesion policy indicators that are relevant is policy objective 2, a greener low carbon transition towards a net zero carbon economy, and then the policy objective 2.2, funding for energy communities, and then also policy objective 5, bringing Europe closer to citizens, which is of course one of the main advantages of energy communities. Then we have the Just Transition Fund regulation, which Article 8, paragraph 2E specifies that in the territorial just transition plans, member states may include measures to increase the investment in renewables and energy efficiency, including for the purpose of addressing energy poverty. And of course, they can support energy communities to achieve exactly those purposes. And again, we see some member states also engaging in this practice. The Common Agricultural Policy Fund, of course, the national CAP strategic plans have already been concluded. But nevertheless, it is relevant to point out that also there are specific objectives which could be linked to energy communities. So we have SO4, which promotes sustainable energy, and SO8, which promotes the sustainable development of bioeconomy, including energy. And the renewable energy communities, as we know, can operate in the heating sector and the gas market, so they could also play a potential role in delivering on renewable gas. The Modernization Fund, which is based on a percentage of the ETS revenues, 2 to 2.5%, and at least 2 relevant priority investment areas in the field of energy could be relevant for the energy communities, energy efficiency and renewable energy. Other dimensions could be part of the future technology that energy communities may adapt, and at times we already see them adapting it, but storage here is of course a key building block to ensuring we make most optimal use of our system, and we hope energy communities will also start investing in this type of technologies more and more. Then the Social Climate Fund, which is based on co-financing as well. So again, a possibility to top up by the member states these budgets. We have a total of 86.7 billion euros foreseen, and the revenues come from ETS 1, let's say, and ETS 2, which is the expansion to transport and buildings. And here in this regard, we have in the regulation, Article 8, paragraph 1C, which provides that the social climate plans may include energy community-related measures to target vulnerable household micro-enterprises and transport users. And we already heard that electromobility could be also part of the game or the business model of an energy community. So on all these fronts, I think energy communities could definitely play a potential role. Then the more traditional instruments, and also the reason why we are here today, we have LIFE, for clean energy transition, for which we have 5.43 billion euro. And we have currently calls running with a strong focus on developing one-stop shops, getting local authorities to support energy communities, or potentially also take the lead in energy communities. Energy communities as a vehicle to address energy poverty, to engage in building renovations, and to also engage in the heating and cooling sector by potentially developing also or managing heating and cooling infrastructure. And then last but not least, we have Horizon Europe, which has more of an innovation focus. And here, the focus areas of the H2020 energy efficiency calls were mostly on one-stop shops, financing, and energy poverty as well. And with that, I gave you, I think, a good overview of what we have available at EU level for the energy communities potentially. Of course, this depends on the member states and how they decide to use the money of these programs in order to accelerate and steer their energy transition. There are some other financing instruments that could be relevant, which the Commission is managing together to some extent with the European Investment Bank. But for this, I think the next speaker will elaborate on the ELENA facility and InvestEU. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you found it useful information.
Indeed, thank you so much, Kayla. Fantastic. Really, I think it was a really great framing and overview of the current situation, and it will be now great to see, I think, in the next few years, the developments and how this will impact the proliferation of energy communities on the local level. So we are moving now to the support offered to the energy communities from the European Commission through the European Investment Bank. So Dinis, please, it's a great pleasure to have you here. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon. I will just try to share the presentation. Let's see if it works properly. Are you seeing my screen?
Yeah, very well. Thank you.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. So, good afternoon, and thanks to the previous speakers for the framework that they have provided. So it will either facilitate or make my life slightly difficult, but I will try to be simple, short, objective, and then I will be around for any questions that you may have. EIB in a snapshot. The EIB, European Investment Bank, is based in Luxembourg and is owned by the 27 EU member states. It aims to provide long-term lending to public and private entities, and public bank has own objectives driven by the EU policies, and we typically provide lending in innovation and climate areas. We find by issuing bonds in the financial market with a very good rating. That is a result of the rating of the member state. And our core activities, they include lending, blending, and advisory, but I will try to simplify all these in the upcoming slides.
Sorry, Dinis. I don't know if it's only my problem, but the audio is very bad here. Maybe try to switch off your camera. I think the problem is that you're sharing your screen. Yeah.
Okay. Is it better now?
It seems.
Has it improved?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. In terms of product, what we have regular loans, and this is what we speak about lending when we provide loans to public or private entities. When we speak about blending, we speak about combining loans with technical assistance, or combining loans with grants or with funds. And then in terms of advising, we have a set of instruments. Now, giving a little bit of snapshot on how can we work on energy communities. It typically depends, but if we look to most of the energy communities, we are speaking about small-scale investments. So if we are speaking about energy community with an overall investment of 1 or 2 million euros, that's not typically the type of the operation, the lend type. We also have some loans, so we provide loans to banks. Then those specific products have the objective of supporting the implementation of small-scale energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. So, meaning that the implementation and the financing of energy communities can also benefit from these intermediated loans. From a technical assistance perspective, and as mentioned by the previous speaker, and I will give a little bit more about that. We have, I just mentioned, 3 main instruments. ELENA, the European Local Energy Assistance Facility, that was created back in 2009 for the implementation of energy. Of energy communities, is somehow more related with the use of structural funds.
Sorry, Dinis, we still have problem with your audio. I think it's better if you stop sharing your screen and we can share your slide, and you just ask.
Okay, let's do it like that.
So I asked to Marta to share your slide. Sorry.
Okay. Is the sound better now?
The sound now is better. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My apologies.
No problem. Yeah. I think that you can, sorry, but you can start again from this slide. I was trying to, but yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, great.
So, okay, super. So here in a snapshot, I will just speak a little bit about the different products, lending, blending, and advising. When we speak about lending, we speak about direct loans to public or private entities. When we speak about blending, we speak about combining loans with community, and I'm usually looking for relatively small investments. But maybe from bank or fund, and these loans, they typically, in some cases, these are credit lines to support the implementation of projects in SMEs or in the housing sector for the implementation of energy efficiency or small-scale renewable projects. So this is a way of financing the investments that are needed in an energy community. From a technical assistance perspective, we have different instruments. The Elena facility, JASPERS, and InvestEU. The way how the technical assistance is delivered is significantly different, but I think it also can be used in a way that will help you to overcome. But if you are planning to implement a project of energy efficiency that also includes energy communities and the installation of renewables, Elena can be the right tool for that, and I will explain you this a little bit later on. But in this case, we will give you the money, and it's up to you to hire the consultant to develop the studies that you need, or to hire additional staff for your project. In JASPERS and in InvestEU, we provide you technical assistance, but the approach is slightly different. We typically give you the technical assistance. Our together with some external consultants, will be responsible to deliver you the technical assistance that you need to implement your project. Of course, the objective of the project will need to be agreed and discussed with you up front, but then what you will receive is the technical assistance directly. You will not receive any type of money. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Again, let's try to be fast because I already lost a little bit of time. So these are, let's say, in a snapshot, the figures regarding the investment of the EIB, European Investment Bank, and the European Investment Group. Most of our activities in the EU, if we look just to the EIB, we are speaking about 60.
Sorry, Dean, it's not working, really. It's not working.
No.
I don't know. Maybe the only solution is that you disconnect and re-enter.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe what I can propose now, maybe we can shift the we can pass the presentation to Chris from Desktop, as he has to leave also in half an hour. You try to reconnect, and then after Chris, we try again with your presentation.
Okay,
If it
let's try
doesn't
to do
work,
that.
yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So sorry for participants for the last minute. So I will give the floor now to Chris, that we will explain how the Repower EU tracker is working. Chris, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I guess the technical difficulties, it's been 3 years since we shifted to Zoom, but we still have them. It happens to everyone. So
Yeah.
I think everyone is very understanding. I'll just share my PowerPoint. Give me 1 second. Just confirm that you can see the full slides.
Very well, thank you.
Great, great. So yeah, my name is Chris Bretos. I'm a project manager at RescuePU, the European Federation of Energy Cooperatives. I'll be very brief. I'll go over practical demonstration of a tool that we've created. Asil has already hinted at it. Basically, we have been mapping together with Bankwatch and Climate Action Network to what extent member states have been using some of their major public funds, such as the Recovery and Resilience Facility and their cohesion and regional development funding, as well as their modernization funds, to support energy communities. It's an online map. You can find it. It's called Public Financing Tracker. You can find it on our website and hover, let's say, to your respective country and see exactly what's happening there. Basically, what we see as of today is that 14 member states in the recovery and resilience plans have actually made an explicit reference of energy communities, which means that either in the past 3 years or in the upcoming 2 years that the facility will still be open, they plan to provide public funding to energy communities. We rely on campaigners, so members of the RescuePU network, to keep proactively updating the map so that we can have an up-to-date, let's say, fully, proactive presentation of what's happening on the ground. It's very interesting just to note that in around December of 2023, we had the final updates of all the recovery and resilience plans, including the REPowerEU chapter, which brought a lot of interesting developments for energy communities. We had countries that up to now had made very limited progress on energy communities, such as Latvia or Cyprus, suddenly promising in the REPowerEU chapter that they're going to bring about a robust enabling framework within the next year, as well as now a fresh, let's say, newly fresh announced funding, such as was the case in Poland, where the funding allocated to energy communities in the recovery plan was doubled. What we're now trying to do in the, let's say, remaining 2 years that the recovery facility will still be open is literally take our members by the hand and try to get them to speak to their respective national managing authorities and look out for this funding, apply for it, or even, as is the case, for example, in Luxembourg and Ireland, where the respective national plans do not explicitly mention energy communities, even then to see if there's any open calls for funding for renewable energy in general that they could still be eligible for. Just some concrete tips on how you can engage. The Commission has a public website with all the national plans in English, in easily accessible, friendly to read PDFs. So you can actually go as well and check what is the most up-to-date recovery plan of your country and what is foreseen there in terms of reforms and investments for energy communities. Of course, each member state has also its national website, but things are a little more muddy there because there is no English translation. A lot of the documents are missing. It's not regularly updated. So it's not, let's say, the best course of action. And I strongly encourage you to go and actually check the plans. A lot of the funds are still under-absorbed by the recovery facilities, so many member states are shifting into high gear over 2024 and 2025, and by the end of 2026. So there's going to be a lot of calls for funding that are going to be announced, including for energy communities. So if these calls have been promised in the plans, hold your managing authorities accountable, see when the call is actually going to be published, and make sure you proactively prepare to apply. And of course, feel free when reaching out to your managing authorities to use the public financing tracker, especially the green colored countries, which we consider the best practice ones, to highlight, so for example, how Spain, which is a leading, a front runner country, is doing quite well in supporting energy communities holistically, both in terms of funding for OPEX and CAPEX costs, but also for example, awareness raising campaigns through one-stop shops. Similarly, we have, as I said, mapping exercise done for the cohesion and modernization funds. I'm not going to spend any time on this. And indeed, Asil has already covered this, but this is just to say that the second generation legislation for energy communities, so the revised Renewable Energy Directive, Energy Efficiency, and Energy Performance of Buildings directives, they really open up the field of potential activities for energy communities to undertake. We think this is a very exciting development. And another thing that campaigners can proactively engage with is the current drafting of the renewable acceleration areas that is happening across all member states. Countries are now choosing basically which areas in their countries they will allocate for the accelerated development of renewable energy projects. It is our policy request as RescuePU that member states allocate at least 10% of the total capacity within these acceleration areas to energy communities, locally owned projects, and make sure that really the benefits are co-owned and co-distributed in local communities where these acceleration areas are located. So you can proactively reach out to your national ministries and help influence the designation and the functioning of these areas. But most importantly, and this is part of what we call the second generation legislation. Asil also alluded on it, but I do want to just spend one more minute to really emphasize that the Social Climate Fund is an opportunity to ameliorate the mistakes of the recovery and resilience plans. The recovery plans were drafted during the pandemic really fast in usually opaque and non-participatory ways. For example, the Greek plan was just given out to private consultancies to be created. So really the whole process was not inclusive of citizens and civil society. This time we can change that. The social climate plans are literally right now being drafted by member states to be given to the Commission by June 2025. So it is really a great moment for you to reach out to your national ministries that are responsible for drafting the social climate plans and request that your views are reflected, that the investments and reforms foreseen in the social climate plans are actually conducive to energy communities and other just transition investments. So yeah, I don't know, local energy sharing, deep housing renovations for social housing, things that actually distribute benefits to local communities meaningfully. And also, of course, you know that the recovery facility is coming to an end by the end of 2026, and this creates a huge funding shortfall for climate. At the same time that there's already 620 billion in a climate funding gap per year in the EU if we want to reach the targets of 2030. So really the Social Climate Fund will be one of the key, let's say, pillars of supporting the climate transition post-2026 that the RRF will end. So I cannot stress enough how important it is that you now proactively reach out to your national ministries to influence this process. And just as a final reflection, to say that as Rescue.eu, we are now also proactively engaged in a conversation together with Bankwatch and Can Europe in the context of the multi-annual financial framework hub, which is convened by the European Climate Foundation. And we're trying to create common positionings and common demands by civil society to influence the next funding cycle of the EU, starting in 2028. We are very keen and happy to carry on this conversation with you if this is something that sounds of interest. We're actually about to create another new working group within the Rescue network, which is dedicated to public financing, where we're going to be really taking stock of the experiences of our members on the ground with public financing and, let's say, transmutating that into policy proposals within the MFF hub. I know that was a lot of information, so I hope I didn't dizzy you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Chris, for being so enthusiastic and for motivating really participants and all people in general to really take part to this new second generation of projects, let's say. So thank you again. Dinis, do we want to try again? Maybe you have a more stable connection now.
Is it working better now?
Yeah, it seems so, but let's see in the next second.
Let's go for it. And I apologize because I was using a headset and probably that was the problem. I don't know. I have moved to another location without anyone else in the room. So let's go for it. If we can start in the same point where we were, because I think.
Thank you.
That's the most.
Marta, can you? Great.
Okay, so here in this case, I was speaking about the different products, loans and technical assistance. Let's say in terms of loans, we usually provide loans to projects, to public and private entities implementing energy and renewable related projects. Typically, energy community projects, they are smaller projects, meaning that we don't deal with small scale projects directly, but what we have are what we call these intermediated loans. We have credit lines with national banks, with local banks fully dedicated on energy efficiency in buildings, energy efficiency in SMEs, small-scale renewables, and this is also something that can also be used to finance the investments related with an energy community, because these banks, they typically have the obligation of passing the lower interest rates provided by the IB to also the entities or individuals that are applying for these loans. From a technical assistance perspective, and I will speak a little bit more about Elena later on, we have the Elena Assistance, which is a facility that started in 2009 and that allows you to receive grants to implement energy efficiency and building integrated renewable projects, including energy communities. So in this specific case, we transfer the grant to you, and it's up to you to hire additional staff or consultants to implement the energy efficiency projects. Then we have Jaspers and InvestEU. Jaspers more related with public authorities and also with the absorption of EU funds. And then also the InvestEU advisory app that also provides technical assistance to public and private entities, in this case, not directly linked with the absorption of EU funds. Both in the case of Jaspers and InvestEU, despite the slightly different scope, the way of delivering the technical assistance is exactly the same. In this case, we don't give you money to hire consultants or hire additional staff. We discuss with you in advance which are your technical assistance needs, and then the EIB experts, together with some external experts if needed, and in this case paid by the EIB, will develop the technical studies that are needed to unlock the bottlenecks that you are facing. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So these are the figures about the EIB financing last year. Most of the activities inside the EU, as you can see. Next slide, please. I will not repeat this that much because otherwise it gets a little bit boring. These are some of the figures related with the EIB lending in 2003, and in this case, energy related. First one, the energy savings that were somehow expected due to the financing made available by the EIB. Second one, the renewable installed capacity from RES. Third one, the electricity produced from RES that is expected to be generated. The fourth one, the number of households that can be somehow powered by the renewable electricity produced from the renewable energy sources supported by the investments financed by the EIB. Something that we also do, we also finance the modernization of the transmission and distribution lines. This is also an indicator, and we can also finance the installation of smart energy meters, but this, let's say, makes part of our overall eligibility criteria. These are just, let's say, some useful indicators. Next slide, please. This is the evolution of the energy lending from the EIB since 2012 until 2023. It has increased from less than 10 billion euros in 2012, apologies, to more than 21 billion euros in 2023. And here you can see the breakdown between the energy efficiency related lending and the renewables related lending. Next slide, please. And here we have the percentage or the representation of how much energy efficiency in buildings represents on the total amount of energy efficiency lending at the EIB, and this is roughly 2/3 of the energy efficiency lending relates to energy efficiency in buildings. And we know that in some cases, and this is also kind of a policy objective of the European Commission, that the energy communities, sometimes they go side by side with some energy efficiency projects in residential buildings, also to tackle energy poverty and so on. Next slide, please. And now speaking a little bit more about the ELENA technical assistance. As I have mentioned before, already 3 times, but 2 times probably didn't hurt because my sound was not good. ELENA started in 2009 as a technical assistance program focused on providing support to public authorities. Since 2016, we can also provide support to private entities. And since then, we have provided support to roughly 166 projects. This represents almost 300 million euros of grants disbursed and committed, because we still have ongoing projects, and the ELENA facility will still continue now during this current multi-financial framework period, so until 2020 and 27. And in terms of investments that have resulted from the technical assistance financed by ELENA, we are speaking about roughly 9.5 billion euros of investments over the last 15 years. ELENA is known by a kind of the main characteristic of ELENA is what we call the leverage factor. We expect that the technical assistance grants will result in investments. There is a contractual obligation, and the average leverage factor in this case is 32. If you divide 9.5 billion by 297, we will get to that value. We have projects in almost all EU member states. We are still struggling to have the first projects in Malta and Cyprus, but because these are smaller countries, it's slightly more difficult to get there. We support, for instance, one city. If the city of Rome wants to promote energy communities and support that, we can provide support to the city of Rome, despite if the energy communities, the investments are only done in public buildings, or if the city of Rome, for example, also wants to promote this across private homeowners so that they can engage themselves into energy communities. Who makes the investment? It's not relevant. We are here with the ELENA Technical Assistance Facility to provide support to unlock the bottlenecks. Next slide. And I believe that I need to be short. Main rules of ELENA. We typically look to investment programs with a minimum investment of 30 million euros, but this can be 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 60, 100 energy communities, no problem. The ELENA grant covers 90% of the technical assistance costs. In terms of application process, this is a fully open process, first come, first served. We currently have, on average, 40 million euros per year to allocate to projects across the different member states. And if now we have 10 projects coming from Slovakia, and if they are all eligible, we don't have any constraints regarding the number of projects that we support in each one of the countries. Of course, they need to demonstrate their own merit, but there is no competition. If the project is good enough, we will work with you, we will request the approval of the European Commission, and the grant will be provided. Of course, some level of maturity needs to be included in this type of projects. The applicant needs to have a clear idea of what he wants to do, probably also to demonstrate that he already has some preliminary experience, but this is something that is usually assessed during the application process. Leverage factor, the rule that I have mentioned below, it's typically, we have two different values, 20 for projects in non-residential buildings, district heating, street lighting, and so on. And for projects exclusively related with residential buildings and transport sector, we have a minimum leverage factor of 10. This means that for every single euro that you receive from us to pay for the technical assistance studies, by the end of the project, you need to be able to demonstrate that that single euro has resulted in 20 euros of investments for sustainable energy projects or 10 euros of investments for residential buildings projects or transport projects. If we are talking about energy communities exclusively in residential buildings, a leverage factor of 10 will apply. If we are talking about energy communities tackling both residential buildings and non-residential buildings, then we will need to go for a leverage factor of 20. If the leverage factor is not achieved, part of the grant shall be reimbursed to the IB, so that at the very end, we always comply with the minimum leverage factor of 10 or 20. The investment can be made by the one applying for the ELENA grant or by others, as I have mentioned before, and the time frame is typically 3 years for energy projects and 4 years for transport-related projects. Next slide, please. How do we calculate the leverage factor? I have already explained. We sum all the investments and we divide it by the ELENA grant. Thank you for going immediately to the next slide, please. These are typically the eligible sectors for ELENA support. We are talking about building renovation and building integrated renewables. This is what typically we finance. And let's say in the case of energy communities, we let's say we can support different technologies. Probably solar PV is the one that is probably most present in most of the projects financed by the supported by Elena. Probably several energy communities that are also including solar PV, but let's say it's up to you to decide and to define the project scope, the technologies, and if this relates to a building integrated renewable, these will be eligible for Elena support. Next slide, please. Who can apply for Elena? Typically, let's say almost everyone from central government, governmental agencies, regional authorities, local authorities, and here we are speaking about public authorities. If we move to the next slide, we will have the private sector entities, energy agencies. They sometimes they are a hybrid body because they are under private law, but with some public shareholders, one-stop shops, associations of homeowners, industrial or commercial associations, banks, and financial intermediaries. Almost everyone can apply for Ellen. There is only one single exemption. Individuals cannot apply for Ellen. But of course, individuals can benefit from the Elena technical assistance if that Elena technical assistance goes, for instance, to an energy agency that will try to mobilize citizens in one region, in one city, to implement energy efficiency measures or to get engaged in an energy community. Next slide, please. What does Elena pay for? Internal staff, all the staff costs that we have in the salary slips, and also pays for external experts. Elena doesn't pay or doesn't support the overheads. Overheads are not eligible, and also travel and subsistence costs. That is not eligible under Elena, but the remaining costs, they are eligible. Next slide, please. Regarding the technical assistance services, or how we call it internally, project development services, they can be done both by internal staff or external experts. It's up to you to decide if you want to hire additional people to your organization to implement the energy community projects, or if you want to go with external experts, or with a combination of both. And on the right box, we have a list of the typical services that are eligible for Elena financing. This is just an example of some of the services. This is not exhaustive. Of course, we need to have a clear connection between the studies and the activities that are being financed by Elena and the investments that are expected to be mobilized. Next slide, please. In terms of application process, could be shorter. It's one of the criticisms that we usually receive. The application process on average takes something like 9 to 10 months. Can be shorter when we have applicants that already have experience. Can also be a little bit longer, of course. But the good thing is that if we reach certain stages of the process, and if you are still committed, and if you are able to deliver all the information that we require, most likely your project will be approved. How does this happen in a snapshot? First, you are invited to fill in a pre-application form. This is a 4 or 5 pages document with a brief snapshot of your project. After receiving this document, we have a kind of an internal review here at the IB, where we make an initial eligibility check, and then we will tell you, okay, your project is eligible, move to the next stage. Second, we tell you your project is not eligible. It's not possible to have Elena support on this. It's out. Or we have some issues regarding the eligibility of your project. If you update this, if you make these or those changes, your project may become eligible. So this is the initial eligibility check. Once you receive the green light on this, you can move forward to the second stage, which is filling in the application. The application is a slightly longer document, some 35 to 40 pages. And for those of you that are somehow used to apply for the EU funding programs, it's not exactly the same, but it's somehow similar. And the difference is that you fill in the application, you share the draft version with us, we share our comments with you, we tell you, you can improve here, or you should improve here. You should include that additional information. You should take this out. We will tell you probably the costs that you have considered for energy audits are too high. You need to revise them down, or you may need a lawyer to support you in some of these activities. Think about if you shouldn't include some costs for another lawyer. We will discuss and we will provide you feedback during this application stage. As soon as we have the final version of the application, we will produce an internal document that will be sent to the European Commission requesting the approval of the project. And let's say roughly 100% of the requests for approval that we are sending to the European Commission, they are approved. As soon as we receive the approval from the European Commission, we will engage with you on signing the technical assistance contract, what we call here as funding agreement, and then you can start the ELENA project. Just one brief note, eligible costs are the ones that are incurred during the duration of the project, meaning that all costs that are incurred during the application process, they are not eligible. Next slide, please. So in a summary, in a snapshot, minimum investment, roughly 30 million euros. If any one of you attending the meeting are located in Cyprus or in Malta, we are flexible. We are speaking about smaller countries, so we can have some flexibility here. Leverage factor 10 or 20, depending if you are talking about residential and transport or about sustainable energy projects. Application process, it's a continuous process. The ELENA grant covers 90% of the eligible costs, usually around 1.5, 2 million euros. That's it. In terms of time frame, 3 to 4 years to implement the projects. And I think that I'm going to the last slide just to finalize, to see if we still have time. These are some, I have just highlighted here some of the projects that we have in different countries that include support to the implementation of energy communities. Most likely here you will not be able to find any guidelines or best practices about how to implement an energy community, but at least you will know who is implementing those projects. And if you want to get some additional information by using the QR code, you will have access to a project fact sheet where you have more information about the project and where you also have the contacts of the project manager of each one of these projects. And we have projects in Greece, European Energy Efficiency Fund that is located in Luxembourg, but is supporting projects all over Europe, Denmark, and Netherlands. And I think this is my last slide, and I think that Andrea is jumping in to tell me that I've spoken for too much time. Thank you very much.
No, absolutely not, Denis. Thank you so much. I think it was really great. Thanks for your very well detailed presentation and to show, okay, despite the high numbers, so most of the times I hear municipalities, especially the small ones, saying the arena is too far from us, no? But also showing how much the program is flexible and how much is easy to access the funding if you are really committed and you're following your criteria, let's say. So really, thank you so much. So we are done with the presentation. I think we have already on the table a lot of contents for starting a Q&A session. We have already some questions here, but before going into those questions, I would like just to wrap up what we said, what we heard, sorry, from speakers. So first of all, we understood that financing energy communities means financing energy communities in terms of creation of the legal entity, including costs for advice or management of energy communities and financial costs, etc. And also it means financing the energy project related with the energy community. There are several financing instruments available, and a lot of info are already available in the website, in Google, and there are several subsidies coming especially from public, but also bank financing, like we saw from the European Investment Bank, but also green loans, ethical finance, crowdfunding and crowdlending as a way for the individual participation into energy communities, and so on. Then we saw how the Commission is supporting the proliferation of energy communities through the different policies and programs, from the Clean Energy for European package to the electricity market design reform and so on. I will not take time on this. Then we saw how the European Investment Bank is supporting as well here energy community related project, especially you have to guarantee this leveraging factor. So if you are thinking about energy communities including residential building, you can apply with a leverage factor of at least 10. Otherwise, if you are thinking about energy communities with no residential building, your leverage factor will be 20, the minimum of 20. And it could be more easy, let's say, the process, but it's not so bad, because we saw that on an average of between 9 and 12 months the application process can be done. And if you are really following the guidelines and your commitments, the selection rate, it's not so bad. It's very good, let's say. And then we saw from Chris that the Repower EU tracker can be really considered as a specific component of the recovery and resilience plans tracker. We have here the opportunity to check how the national recovery and resilience plans are really progressing, and if they are promising what they wrote some years ago in very hurry and urgent conditions. So really not involving the relevant national, regional, but also local actors, communities. So we have now really the opportunity to follow up with the ministries and check if everything is on track, and we can really try to get this moment to avoid the mistakes of the recovery and resilience facility. I think it's done from my side as a wrap up, and maybe we can start reading the questions that we already have. So I think the first one is for Achille from Goran Kacic. What would in practice mean exemption of bidding procedures within state aid guidance? This is for you, Achille.
Yes, thank you very much. So to see it actually in practice on how it would function from a legislative point of view, I would just refer you to the Energy Communities repository, which is no longer actively managed, but you will see the policy database. And if you click on, let's say, Germany as a member state, you will find there a reference to such an explicit exemption from a competitive auction scheme from a legal point of view. Now, just to clarify a little bit on what it could mean, we have a general framework in the Renewable Energy Directive, namely Article 4, that regulates support schemes for any actor, including energy communities. And as a rule, everything is auction-based, and the subsidies that are being received, they also need to respond to market signals in order to make sure that renewable energy producers also maximize their market revenues. Now, exemptions to that are possible for smaller scale installations. And then the state aid guidelines clarify that for an auction, which is a competition between different bidders who then try to offer the lowest price, and then who offers the lowest price then ultimately also receives the subsidy. Now, this auction does then not apply to renewable energy communities, so they don't need to, let's say, compete together with more commercial renewable energy developers. Of course, this exemption can then translate into, let's say, direct access to feed-in premium price contracts, which are long-term agreements with prices that are to some extent tied to the cost of the production of energy. Or they can also be participating in separate ring-fenced auction procedures for energy communities. So in this regard, it could be foreseen that you can have an auction where competition occurs between renewable energy communities to still tap into this efficiency perspective or benefit of having these auctions function for the access to operational support. The auction is not related to the subsidy that is actually received, which needs to transition to a premium pricing system, and so shift away from this old feed-in tariff system to make sure that when the prices, when you can sell on the market, and it's you can recover your production cost by selling on the market, then you, of course, you don't need necessarily a subsidy. And because solar PV especially already pays itself off. We know that it's a good investment to make. So we want to also make sure that those market signals are there, so that the market revenues can also be maximized, and we can make most efficient use of available subsidies.
Great, thank you so much. I think it was very clear and detailed as well. Then we have some questions for as regards the Elena program. So Dinis, can the Elena leverage factor be achieved by aggregating investment across multiple eligible European countries, or do the investments have to be focused within a single country? This is the first question. The second one is, does the Arena facility have specific consideration or preference for funding more social, equitable, affordable, cooperative homes and building models?
Okay, I will address those two questions in a single shot. So we can have one project that is covering one or two countries, and then the investments can take place in that one, two, or three countries. There is no problem on that, but the application will need to highlight that, and will also need to clarify how the technical assistance will be delivered to each one of the countries. Let's say if we are speaking about having a project in Portugal, another one in Germany, and another one in Croatia, it may sound strange. If we have a project that goes with Netherlands, Denmark, and Germany, there are, or on the three Baltic countries, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, probably it makes sense because there are some regional, some aspects may be similar, and we may have some economies of scale regarding that. Regarding the preference for specific sectors, subsectors, or specific conditions, we don't have that. In Elena, it's a first come, first served process, meaning that the one that arrives first to our door and that is able to make all the run faster will get first to the funds. Typically, we have never yet rejected projects due to the absence of funds. So feel free to approach us and to submit your ideas, because there is no competition across the different projects. We also don't give preference to probably sectors or subsectors that should somehow have a different support. I do agree with that, but let's say due to the nature of Elena, that does not apply.
Great, thank you. And then the last questions, okay, is how we can participate in these applications. People are asking your contacts or to send an email to you, but maybe you can just explain how they can really apply. I imagine everything is on the website. So
okay, everything is on the Elena website. I think my email was available in the last slide of the presentation. So feel free to approach me, and then I will send you an email with the links to the EIB Elena webpage, where you can find the pre-application template, the application template, the frequently asked questions, and some additional information that can clarify your questions. I will just take the opportunity in 20 seconds to clarify another topic. It may be difficult to get to 30 million euros of investments. We know that. CINEA also has a project development assistance facility based on calls, let's say the regular approach of the EU support, that usually supports smaller scale projects. So there is no competition between us and CINEA, but you can apply for that if that is the case. And let's imagine that you have one municipality, but bundling all your investments, you don't get to 30 million euros. There is another option. If there is you can apply together with 2 or 3 or 4 other municipalities, or if you have a regional energy agency or any other type of public body that aggregates 10, 15, 20 municipalities, you can also apply together. The funds will be delivered to that entity, and then that entity will manage the project, will hire the consultants, will hire the additional staff, and deliver the technical assistance to 2, 3, 4, 20 different municipalities. No problem.
And if I can just follow up with an example, really, I heard several histories from, especially from small municipalities, small and rural municipalities. They are really starting to get into these opportunities. I heard about a group of municipalities from south of Italy, really small villages, and they are at the end they got the funds. So really, I encourage all authorities to have a look there. So thanks again for this answer. And Alexander is asking if the presentation will be shared to participants. Yes, sure, we will follow up with an email, I imagine, to all people registered and participants, with all the presentation and the recording as well. If there are no other any questions, I will give the floor to Elina for closing this webinar. Thank you, everybody. Thank all the speakers for participating, for making this session really interesting and possible. And thanks to all participants from the Covenant of Mayors side for attending this event. Elina, please, the floor come back to you.
Thank you very, very much, Andrea, for the great moderation. Thank you to all the speakers for the great, insightful presentations that we had today, and I hope it was insightful for our audience as well. So the next and last, as I mentioned in the beginning, webinar that we have in the series is planned for the 25th of April, and more information will be published in our social media, and on social media that you can find on the scanning the QR code, and of course in Beckon's social media on LinkedIn. Yes, I'm here to confirm also that the presentations and the recording will be shared in the platform. So everything will be available there. Also, what Dinis suggested for the links, we will be there, so you can find it easily there. I will post the link of the platform so you can register and have access to all the materials, to the previous webinar as well for the next one. And I think we can conclude. Thank you very, very much again. Have a great evening, and we hope to see you in the last one. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.